Exterminatus is the name in High Gothic of an action ordered by the highest authorities of the Imperium of Man to destroy an entire planetary biosphere and all life upon a world. This action is only taken in those extreme circumstances where a potential or actual extinction-level strategic threat to the entire Imperium exists on the planet and might spread to other Imperial worlds. The world in question may have fallen under the sway of chaos, or its imperial government overthrown and replaced with the rule of Xenos, such as gin-stealers, or it could be a non-imperial world harboring an extremely powerful and dangerous species of Xenos. Exterminatus is often used when a world is deemed not worth the number of people and resources that would be required to conquer or return it to the bosom of the Imperium. Exterminatus is very rarely used on vitally important or strategically valuable planets to the Imperium. Typically, the order may only be given by a high-ranking Imperial commander in the Astra Militarum, Navis Imperialis, or the Adeptus Astartes, or by a full member of the Imperial Inquisition. The execution process of the planet can be carried out in various ways. The Imperial fleet usually resorts to mass bombardment, as the number of ships in fleet formations often allows for shattering small planetoids. The Space Marines prefer to use torpedoes and bombs, scouring life from the planet's surface. The Inquisition considers the best method to be using others' hands. Exterminatus has existed since the times of the Great Crusade. Initially, the authority to sanction Exterminatus was reserved exclusively for the Emperor and the Primarchs. However, once the Horus heresy broke out and burned through the galaxy, the newly formed Inquisition was granted the right to speak on behalf of the Emperor. Exterminatus is always a grave and irreversible decision. For this reason, not all forces of the Imperium immediately consider its application. It is not even mentioned as a solution to all problems, despite the fact that a planet is halfway to becoming a demonic world. As was the case with the planet Ogris, the Imperial Fists decided the situation by other means. But more often than not, the fate of a world was decided by the forces of the Inquisition. The Imperium knew of Inquisitors who held that they had been doing this for over a century, burning worlds to ashes. As for the current state of affairs, the Inquisition has an entire Ordo Excorium created exclusively for managing such affairs, so that people do not commit mass genocide when an alternative possibility for solving the problem exists. Ordo Excorium is a junior ordo of the Inquisition. The department consists of just under 100 Inquisitors. According to official data, they approve only about 10% of the requests they examine. This is quite a dismal statistic, but what statistics aren't dismal in the Imperium? The human factor has always been the main element in passing judgment on a planet. Many decisions can be made only because politics or the selfish motives of an Inquisitor or another high-ranking figure have entered into play. Corruption and levers of pressure have always been methods of the Imperium, and since the Inquisition is the last line of decision-making and it has only internal regulation, there is always room and temptation for abuse. Exterminatus can be executed in many ways. Some of them are very specific and implemented only because the standard and widespread methods are not applicable to the given situation. As we touch on the list of known cases of Exterminatus practice, you will learn about a couple of such methods. For now, let's consider the main methods. An orbital bombardment from Imperial warships is the simplest means of carrying out an Exterminatus, as it can be done solely through the conventional firepower already available to the Imperial Navy. The power of an orbital bombardment can range from small precision strikes, not unlike that of modern surface-to-surface missiles, to the unleashing of full thermonuclear blasts. Typically, specialized munitions like cyclonic torpedoes are used, designed to destroy all life on a planet's surface and potentially any entrenched even in the planet's crust. The contaminant can penetrate even hermetic suits, including power armor. Exterminatus protocols dictate that a lance strike or an incendiary device be deployed to ignite the byproducts and turn the atmosphere into a firestorm that usually takes out whatever life may be left. Only those who may have escaped into especially deep underground shelters can survive a virus bomb attack. The population of Tyrannid managed to escape complete destruction this way, but their once verdant world was forever transformed into a desert. Virus bombs are known for their extreme speed. During the Horus Heresy, they completely wiped out Istvan III's entire population of 16 billion people in only solar minutes, leaving the planet barren but habitable, if only just. This method was most frequently applied during the Great Crusade, and during the Horus Heresy at the end of the 30th and the beginning of the 31st millennia. In some cases, the lifeless dead worlds, all that remained from planets that had been subjected to virus bombs, still proved to be valuable to the Adeptus Mechanicus. These planets can be transformed into mining worlds, or even prepared for a new cycle of terraformation to make them habitable for Imperial colonists again. They were largely replaced in the Imperial arsenals by more powerful cyclonic torpedoes by the end of the 41st millennium, but they were still preserved in some arsenals. The reason is the insufficient reliability of application. Often the danger lurking on a planet could survive a virus bombing, requiring the application of additional measures. A cyclonic torpedo is an Imperial weapon of mass destruction that is deployed from a void craft into low planetary orbit. There are a wide variety of weapon types covered under the designation of cyclonic torpedo, including the atmospheric incinerator torpedo, but all possess the capability to destroy the entire biosphere of the target world, either through the initiation of a thermonuclear reaction that ignites all free oxygen in the atmosphere, or the simple expedient of nuclear fusion-assisted plasma bombardment. Whatever the exact origin of the mass death to come, the result of these weapons is always the same: the complete destruction of the planetary biosphere, with its atmosphere burned away into the void and its oceans boiled to vapor, leaving behind the barren bedrock of a dead world. The blast radius is large enough to be seen from space, and the detonation usually powerful enough to crack a planet's crust and destabilize its core. An atmospheric incinerator torpedo is an Imperial weapon of mass destruction, a variant of the cyclonic torpedo that is deployed from space into low planetary orbit. It will ignite a runaway thermonuclear chain reaction within the atmosphere of the target world that will rapidly consume all the free oxygen, initiating a planetary inferno that will burn the entire biosphere to ash. The atmospheric incinerator torpedo is only used by the armed forces of the Imperium of Man to carry out an authorized Exterminatus action on a world that has been deemed to present an extinction-level threat to other inhabited regions of the human-settled galaxy. This weapon was notably deployed to carry out an Exterminatus action on the world of Medusa IV in the Medusa system around the year 750 of the 41st millennium. The planet had been overwhelmed by the forces of chaos, who were a constant danger due to the Medusa system's proximity to a warp rift known as Van Grota's Rapidity. Despite the intervention of a number of Imperial forces, including the Ultramarines' Second Company, the warheads ignited the oxygen-rich atmosphere of the planet, devouring everything in a blistering conflagration that seared all signs of life from the world, turning metal into molten slag and rock to glass as the Inquisition's fiery judgment took its toll. The planet burned brightly for a whole solar month, and from the safety of their own world the people of Medusa V looked on in awe as their neighbour was consumed in the purifying flames of the Emperor's justice. Those loyalist citizens of Medusa IV who had escaped offered prayers of gratitude to the Emperor for their deliverance. Modalis-class atmospheric missiles are the most powerful type of Imperial Phosphex weapons. During the Horus Heresy, in the battle for the planet Perception, Chapter Master of the 17th Ultramarines, Ecus Decimus, decided to use Phosphex to secure victory over the word-bearers already on the scorched earth. The surviving ship of the 13th Legion, Righteous Fury, launched 24 Modalis-class atmospheric missiles at the world of Perception before it was finally destroyed by the 17th Legion's ship, Sanctified. Cold fire spread across the planet, consuming the remaining defenders and attackers. The planet turned into a hell. A two-stage cyclonic torpedo, which is a more exotic form of the standard cyclonic torpedo, is the most common of a special class of rare Exterminatus weapons, designed for use against atmosphereless or biologically void worlds. Certain Necron tomb worlds being the main example. These torpedoes possess two-stage warheads. The first stage is an unusually powerful melter charge that bores straight through a planet's crust and mantle to its core. The second stage is a modified cyclonic plasma charge that destabilizes it, in most cases physically destroying the planet from the inside out. Talos of the Night Lords used a scaled-down version of the torpedoes when the strike cruiser of the Genesis chapter tried to hide behind one of the moons. The torpedo made a continent-sized hole in the satellite, and the Night Lords watched as the Loyalist ship was torn apart as a new asteroid field of debris shot into space from the other side of the moon. Asteroid strike. This method involves radically altering the orbit of the nearest moon or large asteroid and placing it on a collision course with the planet, and therefore requires the use of several Mechanicus spacecraft. This method was used to destroy Phaeton Prime when a virus bomb failed to fulfill its function. It was also used during the Horus Heresy to destroy the World Eater's recruitment world, but and during the Badab War to finally breach Huron's defensive ring of steel around Badab. Needless to say, this method destroys the planet in question. Despite its effectiveness, the Adeptus Administratum fervently requests Imperial commanders to avoid this method whenever possible because it is costly and time-consuming. It may take weeks or even months for the moon or asteroid to actually strike the planet, which is expensive in terms of rations and void fuel while ships idle. Moreover, there are always orbital bombardments which only cost a single day's expenses economy. Other factions in the world of Warhammer can also boast various means of destroying planets and planetoids. Let's start with the Aeldari. This race, once ruling over the entire galaxy, has preserved a vast number of artifacts that can astonish even the most inquisitive scholars of the Imperium. One such was recorded on Validor. The Eldar called it Fireheart. Its operating principle was to resonate with the planet's core, after which the core began to disintegrate, thereby provoking numerous lava eruptions on the surface and destabilizing the tectonic plates. The effect is similar to a two-stage cyclonic torpedo. Fortunately for the human race, the Aeldari value life and do not rush to use their terrible artifacts of bygone eras with the same recklessness as the Imperium. The Necrons have it more interestingly. This faction possesses a vast array of planet-destroying weapons, and it is not surprising, knowing how advanced the Necrons have become in manipulating the physical principles of the world. They simply appear as they awaken, presenting here and there more and more terrifying devices and weapons. Among the most interesting examples is the World Engine. This tomb world resembled a planet more than a ship. Its primary weapon, a titanic Gauss weapon, capable of splitting entire planets with just one volley. Fortunately for the Imperium, it was destroyed in the early stages of its existence after awakening. Nor should one overlook such unusual methods as the Necron pylon network in the Pariah sector. The system itself serves to suppress and subsequently destroy any higher form of life on planets within a vast sector. Beings distanced from the warp simply lose any vital signs, over time experiencing a terrible collapse of consciousness. This method also solves any problems with demonic influence, as the warp in the action zone of the Necron pylon network comes to a state of absolute calm, paralyzing any entities within it. And the most reliable weapon in the arsenal of the Necrons is the Catan Shard. These beings have subjugated the laws of physics and can use them as they see fit, which means that gravity has no hold over them. Catan Shards can simply hurl a planet's satellite onto its surface or begin to split its crust, reaching down to the core. These beings have many methods, and all depend merely on the power of the specific shard taken. The Tau have no need to destroy entire planets, although they already possess weapons suitable for this purpose. Tau technologies are capable of much, and if they wish, this faction could turn into the most dreadful nightmare for the Imperium. Recall the Arca Cannon, which destroyed only the central nervous system of higher life forms at vast distances, without affecting the infrastructure or the rest of the planet's biosphere. An ideal cleansing tool for subsequent colonization of any world. However, a unique moral compass still directs the development vector of the Tau in a more restrained, rational direction. For the Orcs, the most effective weapon of Exterminatus is asteroids and even moons. They simply equip them with engines and direct them straight at planets thereby causing an apocalyptic disaster. In the War of the Beast, they made a bold move. They brought in a huge fortress made from a satellite of some planet, reinforced its surface with numerous steel plates, and executed an uncontrollable warp jump into the unknown. The resulting new satellite appearing near the target planet causes a multitude of cataclysms on its surface. For the Orcs, this was not enough. They activate a gravitational nexus based on the interaction between the gravitational fields of two planets, after which huge chunks the size of tall mountains are literally ripped from the unfortunate world and rush into the vast maw constructed on the surface of the attacking moon. Subsequently, the moon only increases in size, gradually consuming other planets. In practice, it sounds terrifying, but most of the attacking moons were destroyed during the War of the Beast, and the practice of using such sinister creations by Xenos no longer appeared in the reports of Imperial commanders. Yet the Leviathan continued to carve its bloody path through the Imperium. Perhaps Leviathan's greatest triumph was the destruction of the vital Forge world Griffon IV, home of the Legio Griffonicus Titan Legion. Kryptman knew he had to slow down the Hive Fleet's advance to buy time for the Imperial Navy's Battlefleet Solar and Tempestus to muster. With grim finality, he ordered a cordon sanitaire established and decided to implement an almost sector-wide scorched earth tactic to prevent the Tyrannids from multiplying beyond the Imperium's capacity to deal with them. Every world within the reach of the Leviathan's advance was to be evacuated and undergo immediate exterminatus wherever possible, so that its biomass could not become new grist for the Tyrannids' production of new bioforms. With one stark, callous decision, the Inquisitor Lord had inflicted the Imperium's worst act of genocide upon its own since the days of the Horus Heresy. Kryptman was denounced for this action as a radical and a traitor at the highest level of the Imperium, and even by many members of the Inquisition. The world of Cordelis was primarily intended for production, and had orbital shipyards large enough to accommodate battleships and strike cruisers. Following the approach of Hive Fleet Leviathan, many people attempted to evacuate from Cordelis, leading to a series of unfortunate incidents. The world was preparing for the invasion of Xenos, hoping for support from the Ultramarines, Mortifactors, and Imperial forces in the subsector. Unfortunately, Cordelis was cleansed, and a large part of its population was killed, but not by Tyrannids. Lord Inquisitor Kryptman ordered an exterminatus on Cordelis using viral bombs and the strike cruiser, the Mortis Probati. The large number of civilian deaths and the fact that Kryptman lied about his intention to protect Cordelis enraged the Ultramarines, especially Uriel Ventris. And the most effective and powerful means of exterminatus are possessed by the Tyrannids themselves. They are it, their very essence. It's hard to argue because their primary purpose of existence is the complete annihilation and absorption of life on any planet they encounter. Perhaps this is the most terrifying weapon in the Warhammer universe. During the conquest of the world of Loki, Macarius, the Lord Commander Solar, ordered the destruction of the entire world. Macarius commanded the tech priests to change the orbit of Loki's moon. The Adeptus Mechanicus executed the order with the help of gigantic machines placed on the surface of the satellite. Titanic plasma engines began to move the moon to the correct orbital trajectory. The result of the impact was the planet's partial destruction, but it caused a powerful shockwave across the surface of Loki, leading to a severe earthquake and the eruption of lava from the planetary crust. In the end, the only humans who survived the cataclysm were the heretics locked in the planet's massive fortresses. Now let's move to a series of famous cases of exterminatus of planets. Mugulath Bay, formerly known as the Imperial Hive world Agrellan, was captured by Commander Shadow Sun and the ethereal Supreme Onva during the times of the Third Sphere expansion. The battle for the planet's capture was the largest of the Third Sphere expansion. Only the molten core of a thermonuclear reactor, which destroyed the moon of Mugulath Bay, turned out to be unsuccessful by the Tau standards. Soon, the Imperium's prefecture launched a major counterattack, deciding to retake the planet with the forces of the 478th Line Fleet of the Ultima Segmentum. Task Force Retribution joined the battle with a couple of hundred ships of various classes. In the end, the Tau managed to withstand, despite the colossal numerical advantage in favor of the Imperials. The Imperium considered it impractical to continue expending resources and subjected the planet to Exterminatus, destroying it. The only torpedo launched at the planet contained a rare Mechanicus device that scorched the planet's atmosphere in a short time, striking the northern hemisphere of the former Agrellan, where there was a high concentration of natural gases. Despite this, several Tau settlements on Mugulath Bay managed to survive thanks to a force shield erected by the Earthcast. However, the esoteric weapon of the Mechanicus turned out to be much more formidable than originally expected. Mugulath Bay had to be abandoned, as soon the entire Damocles Gulf was engulfed in flames, separating the Imperium of Man from the Tau Empire. Don't ask how it was engulfed in flames, just take it as a fact. Faced with the threat of a Tyrannid invasion, the Imperium often resorted to desperate measures, taking a cue from the position of Cryptman. The Ulic sector is an Imperial sector located in the Ultima Segmentum. The year 997 of the 41st millennium, a series of Exterminatus missions were executed by the Space Marines chapters of the Death Strike Genesis chapter, Iron Hands and Flame Falcons on many worlds of the sector not yet seized by Hive Fleet Leviathan. These missions were successful and hindered the Tyrannids from acquiring the precious bioresources of Ulic, albeit at a high cost. The world of Azoth was the site of a demonic invasion, instigated by the heretic Inquisitor Jovus Theon and the Dark Apostles of the Word-Bearers. Later, the planet Azoth was cleansed of life by the Revilers. Chapter the year 999 of the 37 Cent Millennium. During the attack on Fenris, demonic forces led by Primarch Magnus made a pact that allowed them to enlist the aid of the forces of Nurgle. This help was provided in exchange for transforming one of the planets in the system into a plague world. Mortarion chose Midgardia, a planet entirely covered with poisonous vegetation, where all population lived in vast underground complexes. During the siege of the Fenris system, the world was devastated by both Tzeentch and Nurgle demons. This led to Supreme Grandmaster Azrael of the Dark Angels enacting Exterminatus. It was not enough, though, because the cleansing fire only killed all life on the planet's surface, and not in its underground complexes. After returning from Midgardia's Stony Heart, Logan Grimnar decided to destroy the planet itself, and did so, blowing up Midgardia's core. The Space Wolves used Morkai's Tooth, an especially powerful cyclonic torpedo launched from their flagship, All-Father's Honor. The torpedo travelled down the central shaft to the Great Generatorum and triggered the planet's core explosion. Midgardia's destruction caused powerful gravitational waves which spread across the Fenris system. These waves reached the sieging Silver Towers and forced them to wink out back to the warp. For years to come, shards of Midgardia fell to the surface of the other planets of the Fenris system, and it is said that people who tried to investigate the impact sites were cursed and slowly wasted away to death. Amun Morris is a forbidden dead world of the Calixis sector. During the Angevin Crusade, Amun Morris's once human machine population was judged too tainted to exist and was infamously destroyed by Exterminatus. Such horrors were attested to on this world that after its destruction, its former location was stricken from all records. Let us return to our catalogue of the long history of Exterminatus across the expanses of the Imperium. Once a productive world, Cressida was gradually transformed into an ice world by the influence of chaos. The responding Imperial Guard regiments included the Royal Validians and the Valhallan Ice Warriors, who fought a losing battle to hold the Chaos forces at bay, while as much of the planet's population was evacuated. After this was done, the planet was subjected to Exterminatus. After the Horus Heresy and the commencement of the Great Scouring, the Loyalists subjected all worlds associated with the Traitor legions to Exterminatus. Barbarus was destroyed by the Dark Angels shortly before the Siege of Terra with cyclonic torpedoes. Another source states that the monument to the fallen of the Death Guard Legion was literally incinerated by the targeted macro cannon fire from 4 ships, Invincible Reason, a Gloriana-class battleship, as well as the cruisers the Silent Kill, the Lady Densnor, and the Last Beast. These same ships, particularly Invincible Reason, destroyed another traitor world, Chemos. The fortress monastery of the Emperor's Children was located at the center of the galaxy, in one of the largest cities of the world, Chemos. After the Horus Heresy, it was bombed from orbit by the same naval formation of the Dark Angels and placed under quarantine by the Inquisition. The sacred scripture of the Songs of Chemos was written in the last hours of the planet's life and is still revered by the slaves of the Emperor's Children. This series of destroyed homeworlds of the traitor legions does not end here. When Colchis faced several Imperial assaults during the bitter war of the Horus Heresy, when the Ultramarines returned to Colchis to purge it after the Horus Heresy, they found a collapsed world. All of the industries were destroyed, and people barely clung on to life. The Inquisition ordered the cleansing by the use of cyclonic torpedoes, disrupting Colchis's delicate geological structure, and thereby triggering a catastrophic explosion that annihilated the planet. This fate was shared by another close world of the Word-bearers, Kur. Brought into compliance by the Word-bearers during the Great Crusade, it was home to Monarchia, the Legion's perfect city. Monarchia was later destroyed by the Ultramarines on orders from the Emperor, and the planet itself was later subjected to Exterminatus during the Great Scouring. The hive world of Chthoniya, the homeworld of Horus himself, was also destroyed. All traitor planets were subjected to the harshest scouring, but often they perished at the hands of their own children. After the traitors' defeat at the Siege of Terra, Perturabo and the surviving Iron Warriors returned to their fortresses. They attempted to protect the small star empire they had created based on their homeworld of Olympia, but there was no salvation from the vengeance of the Loyalist legions during the campaign of the Great Scouring. The Imperial Fists and Ultramarines, during the 10-year campaign to liberate the conquered worlds from the control of the traitor legions, discovered an already well-prepared bastion of resistance. The Iron Warriors' garrison on Olympia held out for 2 standard years, defending against attacks by the Loyalists. Eventually, when defeat became inevitable, the Iron Warriors activated their own missile arsenal across the surface of the besieged world. These titanic explosions turned Olympia into a scorched wasteland. As on other homeworlds of the traitor legions, on Olympia, the Inquisition declared quarantine. Nuceria, which was initially cleansed of life by the forces of the World Eaters and Word-bearers, was now fully subjected to Exterminatus. During the Siege of Terra, Nuceria was completely obliterated from orbit by Lionel Johnson and his vengeful Dark Angels. Sometimes this was done even before the start of the Horus Heresy. A fleet of 50 ships from the Night Lord's Space Marine Legion destroyed Nostromo, their homeworld. Incandescent spears of blinding white light leapt from the barrels of uncounted batteries, stabbing down at the world below. Converging and multiplying their energies, the power of 1,000 caged stars coalesced into a pillar of light thicker than the widest spire of Nostramo Quintus. The great beam dispelled the darkness that shrouded Nostramo. The skies bathed in light and fire, blooming into life as the awful heat of the Night Lord's bombardment ignited the air for kilometers in all directions. Night Haunter watched the death of Nostramo with calm detachment, feeling the enormity of the action he had just taken settle upon him like a dark shroud. Strangely, it was not the burden he had expected. As he watched tectonic plates split apart and the molten heart of the planet ooze up to swallow the landscape and burn away the atmosphere, the only sensation of which he was conscious was intense relief. The past was dead, and he had shown that the creed he lived by was more than just empty words. The shockwave of this terrifying act would reverberate around the Imperium and come to the attention of those who, like him, understood the sacrifices needed to preserve the galaxy for humanity. Nostramo burned, and Night Haunter said, "I take this burden of this evil upon myself, and I will not fear it, for I am fear incarnate." Space Marines of the 3rd Company of the Blood Ravens chapter predominantly recruited their members from the planet Cyrene. When it was discovered that the population of Cyrene had completely fallen under the control of the ruinous powers, the planet was subjected to Exterminatus. The surface underwent intensive bombardment with mass drivers, lance strikes and cyclonic torpedoes by the order of the Inquisition, and Primarch the destruction of Cyrene, his homeworld, weighed heavily on Angelus for the rest of his life, although he always expressed confidence that he had made the right decision. The planet is now an S-class dead world, and all further travel to the world is forbidden by the order of the Inquisition. In addition to this, there was another world from which the Blood Ravens chapter recruited Typhon Primaris. The planet was a dangerous place, where barely 30,000 people were scattered across the habitable surface, living in scientific stations, resource extraction facilities and military bases. Imperial attention returned to the planet in recent years when the Space Marines of the Blood Ravens chapter began recruitment on Typhon Primaris. Ultimately, to deal with the threat of the Tyrannids and chaos, approximately a standard decade later, an Imperial Retribution-class battleship under the command of the Inquisition's Ordo Malleus during the Third Aurelian Crusade conducted an Exterminatus operation on the world. As a result, the world turned into a barren, devastated, dead world. Thranx was noted to have fallen silent for a period of approximately 20 years. Having not received tithes or contact, the Adeptus Terra dispatched a fleet consisting of elements of the Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Ultramarines, and the Necromundan Imperial Guard. The fleet was led by Inquisitor Van Damme. Upon reaching the system, communication was established. The planetary governor explained that communications had been lost due to warp storms and orc raiders. The governor offered immediate reparations and apologies and invited Van Damme to the surface. As a result, Van Damme and an honor guard of Dark Angels descended to the planet and were hosted by the governor at an official reception. During the reception, it was discovered that the planet was under the control of Djinn stealers, and their plan to sneak aboard the fleet was thwarted. The Dark Angels and Inquisitor Van Damme retreated to orbit. Exterminatus was ordered, and the planet was cleansed via virus bombs. All systems in the nearest subsector were also checked for Xenos infection. Zoros was the first homeworld of the Firehawk Space Marine chapter. During the Wars of Apostasy in the 36th millennium, they valiantly fought in many great battles against the forces of the mad renegade Vandir, who declared himself both the High Lord and Ecclesiarch. For their disobedience, the Firehawks paid with the destruction of their first homeworld. The Frateris Templar fleet subjected the planet to thermal bombardment, which boiled its atmosphere and scorched its surface, leaving only charred ash on the surface. Verdun II was an Imperium world that became the site of a series of battles between the Deathstrike chapter and hordes of recidivists. The battles finally ended when the Deathstrike performed an Exterminatus on the world. Hesperax is a Dark Elder world ruled by the succubus Lilith Hesperax, who received her second name from the name of this planet. During the capture of the world Ulthwi, the Dark Eldar drew the attention of Deathwatch Space Marines, who landed on Hesperax, but were captured themselves, sharing the fate of the Eldar to be fighters for the amusement of the Drukhari. However, the Space Marines managed to make a daring escape during a fight in the arena. Beneath the arena itself and the volcano where it was located, the Deathwatch finds an ancient esoteric pool where all the souls killed in the arena are gathered. Knowing that this place is important to Lilith, they begin to mine this source of energy with all the explosives they were able to procure during the escape. As soon as the detonation occurs, the Space Marines retreat to their surviving Thunderhawk and return to their ship. The explosion of the device triggers a chain reaction and the destruction of the volcano itself. Its eruption becomes so powerful that the planet begins to disintegrate. Thus, the Deathwatch became the initiator of the Exterminatus of the Xenos planet in a rather unusual manner. The vessel Emperor's Despair spent years executing the order of Exterminatus of planets with the Life Eater virus. Many planets were destroyed by the chapter of the Doom Warriors through the bombardment with virus bombs. The Emperor's Tears, a new strain of the virus that they received from a Magos of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and were to test on a world named Carnage, which had been condemned to Exterminatus for total heresy. The new strain was delivered and installed in an Adeptus Mechanicus carrier in a short time. The modified Life Eater, which attacks not flesh and bones, but the spark of life itself. The previous Life Eater absorbed protein exponentially, multiplying and turning all organic matter into an explosive slush, which burns all life-supporting elements on the planet. The Emperor's tears take away life itself. Deep in the bowels of the ship, a rumbling fury swiftly built towards a throbbing, ear-cracking crescendo, and then vanished. The torpedoes struck the upper atmosphere like splashes of quicksilver. Through the viewing bays of the launch arcade, their disintegration was beautiful, their payload sparkling and glinting in the sun's light. Though dwarfed by the sheer scale of the planet and soon lost in its thick atmosphere, the Emperor's tears had an immediate effect. As the lower atmosphere was punctured, great dark clouds of dead matter billowed into space. It was the dying bacteria that lived in the planet's ammonia-rich atmosphere. As life increased in complexity and frequency towards the planet's surface, such dark clouds became stains racing across the planet, like oil upon water, contaminating every iota of life with death, robbing all existence of being. Clouds of dead and decaying matter mushroomed into space, propelled by the violence of their own destruction. The hive minds became still within moments. Carnage became a place of peace. In the end, it turned out that it was a virus created by a possessed emissary of Nurgle, and all those killed resurrected in the form of plague zombies, which contributed to the total infection of the entire region. The Horus heresy led to the emergence of many anomalies. During the formation of the Ruin Storm, the world of Davin became the center of this great warp storm and was surrounded by a massive sphere consisting of the bones of trillions of dead organisms from across the galaxy. Now, as a world of madness, Davin was visited by the combined fleets of Sanguinius, Rabuta Gilliman and Lion L. Johnson. They attempted to break through the Ruin Storm and reach Terra. During the battle, the Primarchs managed to evacuate the planet and destroyed Davin with cyclonic torpedoes, using the forces of 6 battleships of the Blood Angels and Ultramarines: Invincible Reason, Red Tear, Gauntlet of Glory, Ultimus Mundi, Intolerant and Decimator. The population of Felkor began to rebel against the Imperium, and the Imperial Guard was brought to the planet to quell the rebellion, among them the 35th Octobian Regiment. During the fighting, the Guard would discover that a Djinn-stealer cult was behind the rebellion, and the Space Marines would come to Felkor to destroy the Djinn-stealer infestation. They succeeded, but it was too late, as Tyrannid spores would soon rain down on the planet. Though the Imperium fought to save Felkor, the Tyrannids soon overwhelmed them, and what survivors could be saved were evacuated before an Exterminatus was carried out, destroying the planet. Formerly a Necron-held planet, Eldritch was destroyed via an Exterminatus order carried out the year 998 of the 41st millennium, by 3 companies of the Sable Swords, Space Marine chapter. 2-stage torpedoes were used for the complete annihilation of the world. During the battle with the Tau Empire for Dolumar IV, Battlefleet Ultima Primus found itself having to agree to a temporary truce with the Xenos and destroy Dolumar IV itself. The world was entirely under the sway of Devastation forces, which threatened to extend their influence further into the sector. The Fleet Command destroyed it with cyclonic torpedoes and virus bombs, allowing the main Tau forces to retreat. When a joint expedition between rogue traders and the Dark Angels' 5th Company entered the orbit of Phase 5, the fleet was immediately fired upon by orbital energy weapons. The Dark Angels' combat dropped to the surface and discovered the population was controlled by some machine intelligence that directed them to attack. The Dark Angels smashed their way through slaved hordes and eventually destroyed the massive logic engines housing the machine intelligence. Although the Dark Angels assumed they had freed the population, the former captives rejected the Imperium's rule and craved to be under the machine's control again. A massive uprising was launched against Imperial rule, and the Dark Angels began a grueling, 4-month counterinsurgency campaign. The rebels were beaten back to their mighty Silicon fortresses and eventually wiped out entirely. After ending the rebellion, the Dark Angels left Phase 5 to burn in the fire of Exterminatus, despite the rogue trader's proposition to study the remnants of the machine intelligence. The year 579 of the 41st millennium, Taurius was cut off by a warp storm. 300 years passed until it emerged. The year 879 of the 41st millennium, it was utterly changed into a demon world of horrors. The warp rift, a tear in reality and the demon's gateway to the physical realm, appeared in the skies as a pulsing ring of purple fire, heralded a week beforehand by strange portents and omens such as statues dripping blood, birds flying backwards, even Imperial Commander Gorstwenkler's daughter trying to bite out his throat, and many other such horrors. Portals opened everywhere across the planet's surface, and hosts of demons poured forth into reality. And then the warp rift began to falter. The demons, sensing their time on this world was short, committed ever more heinous acts, eventually slaughtering and burning every creature they could find in immense soul furnaces that swathed the world in pitch blackness. The planet was nothing like it had once been, and in mercy Inquisitor Thrax ordered Exterminatus. Horestis was a demon world given wholly over to the power of Nurgle when Chaplain Vorksek Calvarius of the Silver Skulls led a demi-company of his brothers to its surface. There the Space Marines brought fire to the world and cleansed a great many of Horestis's corrupted sites. But with each victory, more Silver Skulls fell, until only Vorksek remained. When the chaplain found himself surrounded by a horde of Nurgle's servants, he called for an Exterminatus from the Imperial Navy in orbit, leaving no chances for himself or this fallen world. The doom of Geistos began with a seemingly insignificant incident. A worker, no older than 12, began to suffer from crippling headaches and hearing voices. Unaware that he was a latent psyker, the boy was brought before the shiftmaster during a particularly severe headache for failing to work diligently enough. In the thrall of his headache, the boy lashed out with a strange curse that not even he understood. Reality began to buckle, and fat-bodied flies bearing the boy's own face and chanting prayers to the chaos God Nurgle disgorged from his mouth. The boy shattered open like a gory flower, and now acting as a demonic portal, allowed something terrible to begin to push its way out of the warp. 3 weeks later, the Grey Knights landed on Geistos. There they found only seas of boiling blood, pouring from demons of Khorne and Nurgle battling each other, and the remnants of Space Marine warriors who had come to aid the dying world. Though cleansed, the Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus judged that the world was tainted beyond all hope, and Exterminatus was enacted by strike cruisers of the Grey Knights. Though a mere few months had passed since the original warp rift had opened, Geistos was no more. In Kataris' past, the White Consul's chapter saved the Agri-world from an Eldar raiding party. Decades later, a demonic incursion from the warp suddenly appeared and overran the planet, killing a majority of the population. A message for aid was sent from the last pocket of Kataris' population still alive. Inquisitorial ships soon arrived in orbit and commenced an Exterminatus on Kataris. His first war for Armageddon was marked by the mass genocide of the population, which witnessed the unfolding madness. Initially, the Grey Knights' ships were destroying the Imperial Guard's transports that participated in the battles on Armageddon. However, when the Space Wolves' battle barge Gilferheim arrives on Armageddon, the Inquisition and the Grey Knights are forced to retreat in the face of the threat of internal conflict. Numerous military transports escape with the help of the Wolves, but Inquisitor Lord Gesme Kisnaros still does not abandon his plans to annihilate the population, and a more extensive purge begins. Any world or outpost that came into contact with the survivors was subjected to Exterminatus by Grey Knight ships. As a result, the Adeptus Astra Telepathica station Ralus Meridian, the worlds of Gendara Quintus and Tybalt, as well as the Adeptus Mechanicus outpost Priam Novus, were destroyed. Meanwhile, the Inquisition itself tracked down the landing transports, destroying them in the warp. It seemed that the actions of the Space Wolves only doomed even more worlds to oblivion. The year 853 of the 41st millennium, the uprising against imperial rule on Crandor III, thought to have been successfully suppressed over 50 standard years previously, had once more grown strong. Mutants, psychers, and all manner of outcasts had been nurtured in darkness and corruption by the whisper of cowled chaos cultists. Even as the surging rebellion takes over the planet's surface, hive city by hive city, the orbital sentinel stations and moon-based defense lasers are captured by Chaos Space Marines accompanied by loathsome creatures, neither man nor mutant, but wholly demonic. 3 Space Marine chapters, led by the stoic Imperial Fists, secure resources, Imperial artifacts, and a few Adeptus Administratum officials before an Exterminatus is mercifully delivered. Some 42 Astra Militarum regiments from Crandor III still exist, the only survivors of their lost and benighted world because they had been shipped to distant war zones before the rebellion began. In the 920th of the 37th millennium, Mataras IV was subjected to the final sanction of Exterminatus that was carried out by the Death Watch to prevent further contamination by a parasite colony of the horrific Hadrous skin weaver Xenoform from spreading to neighbouring worlds. The Hadrous is a species only previously encountered in the southwestern extremes of the Segmentum Tempestus, and its presence on Mataras IV is a mystery of dire import that remains unsolved. The former missionary, now wanted heretic Coriolanus Vestra, corrupted the population of Lassiv to the worship of chaos and incited them to kill the planetary governor. The planet and its population were later destroyed by Exterminatus, though Vestra would escape and go on to corrupt more worlds. On this planet was an outbreak of the Plague of Unbelief and the Orc invasion at the same time. Due to these two factors, the planet was subjected to Exterminatus. It was on this planet and under these circumstances that Hadriana Furia, Inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, first met Inquisitor Malia Orbiana of the Ordo Xenos. Maladrax is a fortress world controlled by the Iron Warriors Chaos Space Marines under Warsmith Shontu, distinguished by being the location where Imperial Fists captain Darnath Lysander was held captive and tortured. When Lysander managed to escape the planet, he returned with reinforcements, devastating the planet in an act of retribution. Later, with the assistance of Orc allies, Shontu established a new stronghold on the planet. The planet was ultimately obliterated by the Phalanx during the fall of Maladrax, the year 971 of the 41st millennium. Rothanon is a world that came under attack by a Tyrannid's hive fleet, the year 993 of the 41st millennium. The Xenos managed to consume the rebels and all other living fauna within a few weeks. This occurred despite the planet being embroiled in a civil war prior to their arrival. The Loyalist commander, Lord General Artemis Blythe, who had been fighting for Rothanon for 3 years, learned about the fate of the planet a few months before the Xenos arrived. A plan was devised to eliminate both the Xenos and the rebels. This involved luring the Tyrannids to the planet and waiting for the biomass absorption phase, then triggering the planet's Exterminatus. The Imperial forces did exactly that, ensuring a rapid and effective evacuation of loyal forces during the Tyrannids' attack. Then a very small vessel, equipped with the fastest drives and the most intricate shielding devices, slipped through the Hive fleet picket ships and launched a single cyclonic torpedo, marking the final demise of the world and the Xenos lifeforms on its surface. The Rothanon rebellion was quelled, and a significant blow was dealt to Leviathan. A disease ravaged the small planet of Nebrus 9, and the cities were overwhelmed by plague zombies despite the Imperial Guard's efforts. Mordian and Noctan regiments were falling back to an evacuation point when the Inquisition called for an Exterminatus on the planet. The Storm Forces regiment known as the Redemption Corps was deployed at the last moment to evacuate the surviving Noctans and Mordians, just seconds before cyclonic torpedoes made impact on the planet. Serving as a forge world since the Dark Age of technology, the inhabitants of Shenlong worshipped a dragon god. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor himself arrived at Shenlong and forced them into compliance. Among those killed by the Emperor was the creator of the Lantern, which would later become the personal sidearm of Mortarion. The planet was seized by the word-bearers of the 41st millennium. Soon after its capture, members of the Blood Angels Space Marine chapter launched an assault and liberated the planet. Later, after Archeo and Steely were killed on Sabian, the Shenlongi all too eagerly embraced the word-bearers again, and Chief Librarian Mephiston concluded that the people of Shenlong were too tainted by chaos, ordering the planet subjected to Exterminatus. Phanon Prime was an isolated hive world, which suffered from pirate activity, Xenos slaver raids and much worse. Its situation only worsened in recent years, as what little imperial protection it received was cut away to aid in the nearby Angevin crusade. Increasingly embittered, Phanon Prime's Lord Commander declared secession from the Imperium, and with the aid of ships from their new pirate allies, soon crushed any resistance from neighbouring planets. In an orgy of bloodletting, he threw down the blessed icons of the Ministorum, and raised the foul idols of chaos in their place, bargaining that the Imperium's preoccupation with the bloody toll of the ongoing conquest of the Calyx expanse would protect him from swift retribution. He was proven wrong as the notorious Xanthite Lord Inquisitor and Warlord Cobras Aquera arrived with an Inquisition fleet task force, rediverted from the Angevin crusade to end the rebellion with extreme prejudice. Smashing aside the raider ships and crippling the planetary defences, Aquera's judgment on Phanon Prime was as harsh as it was merciless, and he deployed the Life-Eater virus without delay. A hive world of 14 billion souls was slaughtered in punishment for their pride and blasphemy unto the last living thing. Afterwards, Phanon Prime was given over as a dominion of the Holy Ordos and quickly began to be used as repository for captured weapons and prisoners to be studied by the cabal of Xanthites drawn to the distant dead world. Within a space of only a few decades after Phanon Prime's establishment as an inquisitorial base, disquieting reports began to reach Inquisitors both in the Angevin Crusade's forces and the nearby Xaniad sector, that darkness and heresy had taken hold once again on the dead world. An Inquisitor was sent to infiltrate the faction using the planet and report back what he found. What he discovered sparked an immediate purge within the ranks of the Ordo Calixis and Xaniad, as the Inquisitors on Phanon Prime were of the traitorous Phanonite belief, the denial of the Emperor as divine, and the pursuit of warp-tainted sciences and the horrors of the dark age of technology. After the death of the Phanonites and those accused of aiding them, the Ordo Calixis came to believe some corrupting presence dwelled on Phanon Prime, and requested the aid of the priesthood of Mars in destroying the planet. This was achieved by tearing a nearby moon from its natural orbit to strike Phanon Prime, smashing the cursed planet to fragments. Inquisitor Severnius led a Deathwatch kill team, including Brother Artemis, to Tyrannid, where they soon discovered the population had been psychically enslaved by the enslavers. The enslavers used their powers on the team and managed to enslave several Space Marines before Severnius managed to raise a psychic shield. Under fire from the population and former comrades, they retreated to a small temple dedicated to the Emperor. There they fought the enslavers' puppets for 6 days before they were able to contact their ship in orbit, and a Thunderhawk was dispatched to retrieve them. Before the Thunderhawk arrived, a weakened Severnius was killed by an enslaved Space Marine, leaving command to Brother Artemis. Gathering the Inquisitor's body, the kill team boarded the Thunderhawk and returned to their ship. Once on board, Artemis ordered an Exterminatus launched on the doomed planet. Trazyn the Infinite is an ancient Necron overlord. Trying to get rid of Oricon, Trazyn launched a Djinn Stealer into the depths of the World Serenade to kill the ancient Chronomancer. However, Oricon repelled the attack and successfully escaped. Centuries later, Djinn Stealers erected a full-fledged cult and raised an uprising across the planet. After the arrival of Djinn Stealers on the planet, the Imperium was forced to perform Exterminatus, turning Serenade into a dead world but leaving access to the Necron tomb deep below, still active. However, his reign would not last long, as Hive Fleet Leviathan soon descended on the world. In the ensuing battle, Carnifexes battled bloodthirsters in the streets, while zoanthropes conducted psychic duels with Lords of Change. The Sky Sentinels chapter were dispatched to reclaim Sondheim 5 for the Imperium. But upon seeing the situation, they opted to call in Exterminatus instead, without even considering landing on the planet. The arriving Grey Knights still descended on the planet's surface to retrieve the valuable artifact, the Book of Pandagaras. They succeeded traditionally with huge losses, after which the planet was destroyed, and the memories of all participating Sky Sentinels were erased. Cornucopia was an agri-world of the Imperium. A fleet of Hive Fleet behemoth managed to create a Djinn-stealer cult known as the Star Chosen on the world, but it was apparently purged by the Ultramarines. However, when it became clear that the governor of Cornucopia, Udo Inglorium, had been corrupted after sending shipments of infested Goliath trucks to Masali, Marneus Calgar himself ordered the planet to be subjected to Exterminatus. St. Josmane's Hope was the 9th planet of the Cadian system. It served as an imperial military prison within the Cadian sector. The heart of St. Josmane's Hope was a vast continent-sized prison complex. During the 13th Black Crusade, the Imperium lost the planet to chaos due to massive prison riots and revolts. They recruited a huge number of criminals for their purposes and gradually transferred them from the planet to transport ships. During a meeting of representatives of all major imperial fighting forces in the sector, Lord Castellan Ursaka E. Creed commissioned the destruction of the planet. With options such as Exterminatus and Nova Cannon bombardment unavailable, the only way left was to send a small special force to trigger tectonic instabilities by overloading the generatorium grid in the main prison complex. Members of various imperial forces were grouped together into Strike Force Herald, penetrated the heart of the beset world and successfully caused St. Josmane's Hope to disintegrate. However, all of its members were lost during the planet's destruction. Corian 9 is a planet deep within the Halo Zone. Little is known about the planet, beyond it having a mysterious network of pre-imperial barrows, as it had barely been charted before the planet was taken by chaos. Corian 9 became a place where cultists of the demon prince Gargatuloth gathered and were sacrificed. Unwilling to commit an immediate exterminatus, the Inquisition opted for a ground assault, as they needed confirmation of the banishment of Gargatuloth. The Ordo Malleus gathered a full 3 brotherhoods, a force of 300 Grey Knights, led by 3 Grand Masters, including Grandmaster Mandalis, who had been the sole member of the assault force who survived just long enough to banish the demon. After the Grey Knights recovered the scant surviving resources on the surface, the world was later subjected to Exterminatus. As the reign of Vandir became increasingly undeniable, his ever-growing madness became impossible to deny. He took perverse pleasure in torturing dissenters and political opponents, and the strong, sharp mood swings of the Ecclesiarch led to Vandir declaring Exterminatus on numerous densely populated imperial worlds, which he believed showed any minor signs of disrespect towards him. So strong was his influence and power that every sector of the Imperium felt the despotism of the Ecclesiarch. And thanks to Vandir's persistent demands to record for future generations every utterance, every atrocity of the tyrant is documented in the smallest details and accompanied by his mad ravings. The dusty but adamantium-rich planet of Soharia became host to an infestation of the cult of the Rusted Claw. Wide-roaming, they made little effort to conceal their growing influence. Planetary Governor Enst, loath to inform the proper authorities, and hence invite a potential exterminatus action upon his beloved world, resorted to drastic measures of his own. After arranging systematic bioscans via his extensive collection of servo-skulls, Enst took great pains to sort those untouched by Xenos gene taint from those who might be compromised. He did so in secret, for news of a Djinn-stealer cult insurrection had reached him from the neighbouring world of Gord Ninth, and he dared not trigger a full uprising just yet. Instead, those deemed genetically pure were gradually secreted in a network of underground bunkers, each locked with a cellular syringe system that kept it inviolable against the alien. When he was sure his core supporters were safe, Ernst levelled a systematic bombardment of hyperfusion missiles from his personal arsenal at all those cities he marked on his prized cartographs as beyond salvation. The solar week-long firestorms that followed razed the planet's surface, eradicating 99% of the populace. Only the hardiest and most resourceful escaped the firestorms, but unfortunately for Ernst, they included a great proportion of outrider cultists from the Rusted Claw. Dialogues of the Order of the Lexicon are called to the refinery world of Van Gogh's Folly to study a cache of ancient texts discovered deep within the planet's crust. While the sisters engage in their research, the Van Goghian Promethean barons begin speculating that the texts may constitute an account of the Emperor written during the Great Crusade. After more than a solar decade, the dialogues report their findings to the ecclesiarchy. Shortly after, a preceptory of the chapter of the Ebon Chalice appears at Van Gogh's Folly and destroys all 4 of the planet's spaceports. Through orbital macro-lord hailers, Canoness Intolerance speaks a prayer of passing for the Promethean barons and their serfs. She then enacts Exterminatus by releasing autocombustion pathogens into the atmosphere. 5 commanderies from the Order of Our Martyred Lady set out to purge the heretical cults that have arisen on the mining world of Chandri. The sororitas never arrived at their destination, giving rise to the belief that the Emperor has denied the planet's inhabitants the mercy of purification. An Exterminatus action was subsequently ordered and carried out. Moirae was a forge world of the Adeptus Mechanicus. During the Nova Terra Interregnum, it was the birthplace of the civil war within the Mechanicus known as the Moirae Schism. During the ensuing conflict, the planet was blasted apart by a fleet from Mars itself, but not before their heretical credo split the broader Adeptus Mechanicus in 2 and sowed confusion in the ranks of the Iron Hands chapter. After the disastrous Battle of Elixir, Skitarii survivors are sent to extract the runic inscriptions upon the ancient standing stones of Grave's End. In doing so, they open a long-forgotten gate into the warp. Elixir is consumed by a demonic invasion, its remaining populace eliminated by a necessary exterminatus within the solar week. As we see, the world of Warhammer is full of danger, and no one can be insured against death which can fall upon you from the heavens without warning or regret. In the Imperium, there are 1,000,000 worlds, and the disappearance of some of them will never be noticed by anyone. The bloodthirsty galaxy has more than enough means to achieve this.